Hello there. Welcome. Hope everyone's having a good weekend. I am going to be reading from Matthew 26. Excuse me. Matthew 27, 3 to 10. Anyway, that's about Judas. When he, kills himself. If you're not familiar, most people are pretty familiar with Judas as the betrayer of Jesus Christ. Just a little bit of the backstory. It's all written in the Gospels, the Gospel being Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the first four books of the New Testament that talk about Jesus's life. Those are the Gospels. So when people say the gospel truth, now you know what they are referring to, if you didn't before. So anyway, Judas approached the religious leaders in this community and he offered to betray Jesus Christ for 30 pieces of silver. I was doing some reading last night about Judas in the Gospels, and Judas, he got his 30 pieces of silver. The study notes in the Bible said that 30 pieces of silver is how much a slave costs in this community. Now, once again, because there is so much confusion, this was like a Roman culture, like a Greek or Roman culture. I think it's a Roman culture. It has nothing to do with like the Atlantic slave trade at all. Like that hadn't happened yet in history. So, keep that in mind when people try and make those comparisons. I mean, it just hadn't happened yet, so it doesn't refer to that. What happened in Alabama in 1850 doesn't relate to that at all. But anyway, so the 30 pieces of silver were about the amount of what a slave costs in this culture. So I would say it's probably a pretty significant amount of money, but it's not a life-changing amount of money. That still did not, like when they made that reference of that's how much a slave would cost today. I was hoping somebody would like break it down, like how much would 30 pieces of silver translate to in US dollars? I'm gonna guess it's like $5,000. So, nice piece of money, but it's not gonna really like change your address or change your life trajectory. So anyway, the story moves forward. Judas points out Jesus by giving him a kiss. Jesus is arrested, tortured, and nailed to a cross. Judas regretted it. So that's where I'm going to start reading here. Matthew 27:3. Judas kills himself. When Judas, who had betrayed him, saw that Jesus was condemned, he was seized with remorse and returned the 30 silver coins to the chief priests and the elders. I have sinned, he said, for I have betrayed innocent blood. What is that to us? They replied. That is your responsibility. Now that's the part I'm going to zero in on. That's like the point of this video here. What is that to us? They replied. That is your responsibility. So Judas threw the money into the temple and left. Then he went away and hanged himself. The chief priests picked up the coins and said, "It is against the law to put this into the treasury, since it is blood money." So they decided to use the money to buy the potter's field as a burial place for foreigners. That is why it has been called the field of blood to this day. Then what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet was fulfilled. They took the 30 silver coins, the price set on him by the people of Israel, and they used them to buy the potter's field, as the Lord commanded me. Now, we don't really know what motivated Judas in the first place. We don't know if he was motivated by some sort of jealousy, perhaps loyalty to the religious leadership that was already in power. We don't know if it was a financial need, some sort of desperation. We don't know. We just really don't know. But he took this money, which was not a life-changing amount of money. And actually, after reading what I read yesterday about the 30 pieces of silver that was equivalent to what someone would pay for a slave. I actually always thought it was a lot less than that, simply because when you think of silver and silver jewelry tends to not be very expensive, unless it's something like very heavy. Like if it's something from like Tiffany and it's very, very heavy, then it'll be a little bit more expensive. But for the most part, silver jewelry is a little bit less expensive. So I always thought it was, a pretty like paltry amount, but evidently maybe it was like a little bit more. But anyway, Judas took his reward for betraying Jesus, and he didn't even use it. It did absolutely nothing for him, and he ended up giving it back to the leaders. And the leaders, when they saw how distraught Judas was, Judas says, "I have sinned," he said, "for I have betrayed innocent blood." And then they replied to him, "What is it to us?" They replied, "That's your responsibility." So they're just like, "Hey, that's on you. That's not our problem. We gave you your 30 pieces of silver, and that's that." So they pretty much used Judas. They just used him. They just used him. And who knows? Who knows? Maybe they were in his ear saying, that dude's not real. All this is a bunch of nonsense. Look at him getting all the glory and not you. Who knows? Who knows what was really going on there? But when it came down to it, and he was regretful, they were like, "Hey, has nothing to do with us." They couldn't care less. And then Judas hanged himself. These religious leaders still did not show very much remorse at all. They just took his silver coins, and then they just used it to buy a field. They used it to buy property to bury paupers in, or I'll say foreigners. Yeah, I'll just say foreigners. I don't know that they're paupers, but to me it sounds like that's where they buried. Um, yeah, it says foreigners, but it sounds like they're like a bunch of like unmarked graves and stuff like that to me. So anyway, the religious leaders, they used Judas, gave him nothing of any real significance. Then he felt bad about it. Then they were just like, "Hey, it's not us." Then they still took that money. They still took their money back. They just didn't put it in the treasury. Because if you've ever had a job, working, like in retail, and you had to use a cash register, that every sale, like every, like where there's a credit card sale or cash, every dime, every nickel needs to be accounted for. They didn't want that money traced back to them, so that's all that was. I think it was kind of an excuse of, "Oh, well, we can't put this back in our treasury," because they don't want that betrayal traced back to them. Now, this sounds like how a lot of people operate in this day and age. A lot of people like to blow some kind of smoke up someone's behind, separate them from God, which is something that would ground them and kind of give them a moral compass to say, "No, this isn't right. Hey, this is wrong." So they get separated from that. Lives are destroyed. Then when there are regrets, they're like, "Hey," and then they step back, and they themselves have no responsibility for it. And so this video isn't so much about Judas and what he did. It's more about the religious leaders that used Judas. So just kind of be wary and just know that that's how users operate. And there are so many channels on YouTube that talk about various things, but they love to throw in how they don't approve of Christianity. It's one thing if someone says, "I am not a Christian," or "I am an agnostic," or whatever. I don't have a problem with that, but so many of them are very, very critical and they talk down on Christianity a lot. And there's no reason for them to, because their platform is not one that typically discusses religions or spirituality or anything. It can be discussing dating or colorism or feminism, and then they go and drop this criticism that they have for Christianity. So they're trying to separate you from God, and you have to kind of wonder why. Because if they don't believe it, if they don't believe it's real, then they really shouldn't believe that it has any power behind it. But so many of them are very focused on talking about why Christianity is like, and belief in Christ is a bad thing. So be careful of that. So they separate people from what is a moral compass. Tell them this, that, and the other. Promise them nothing. The person they use gets nothing, and then they have no responsibility. There's a lot of that going on in the world. On a person-to-person level, and I also see it happening with a lot of like social movements, institutions, etc., etc. I mean, it really is a dog-eat-dog world out here. So stay near God is all I can say. And I ran across this one YouTube channel. I had not seen it before, but they were talking about the rapper T.I. had some criticism of a church that he visited, and that's fine. T.I. has the right to his opinion, and I'm not going to say that his experiences are not valid. But this one YouTube channel was just like really harping on it, and it was the typical stuff, talking about tithes and such. And he was just against it, just against tithes and the so-called black church. And the thing that was a kick in the pants to me was this person was asking people to donate to his YouTube channel. Is that not hilarious? It's like, no, don't pay tithes. Don't donate to a church. Oh no, that they're just trying to get over to you. But if you would like to support my YouTube channel and my Patreon, here's the link. I mean, it was hysterical to me. I mean, good grief. At least churches, I mean, geez, at least I'll do a free dinner a week and give kids some school supplies and give people some coats and mittens and stuff. Like, what is this YouTube channel doing? Oh God, that was something else. So anyway, just beware of users. Remember, you can tell a tree by its fruit, and that's what people are worried about, is being seen for what they truly are. And if you read the Bible and stay in the Bible and judge people by this standard, you can tell a tree by its fruit, and you can tell someone who actually cares for you over time. It takes time. Tell someone who actually cares for you and has your best interest in heart versus someone who's just trying to use you. Excuse me. Most people out here are just trying to use people. I am 44 years old, and I will say I have regrets in life. Not many, but I do have some. But I have never, ever regretted believing in Christ and having Christ in my life and following the Bible. The older I get, the more and more things ring true. So that's just my testimony. So yeah, Judas is an interesting fellow. There's a lot more there than what I was bargaining for when I did some reading last night. So I gotta cut this short because I don't get more than 15 minutes. This is already over 14. So anyway, everyone, thanks for watching and have a wonderful rest of the weekend. Thank you.